Hello, and welcome to the fourth presentation on the U.S. National Seed Strategy. I'm Patricia De Angelis, a botanist at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and chair of the Federal Committee to the Plant Conservation Alliance. By now, you've learned about the first three goals of the U.S. National Seed Strategy. Goal 4, the final goal of the National Seed Strategy, is dedicated to communication. I'm going to talk to you today about what we included in our communication goal, how we went about communicating, the progress we've made in communications, and what we see on our horizon. Goal 4 asks us to ensure good communications. The SEED strategy is a unifying, collaborative national effort that requires broad communication of both goals and accomplishments. We felt that communication was integral to the success of the strategy, and so we created an entire goal to address our communications needs. The goal directs us to develop strategies for internal and external communications. Key to implementation is the ability to foster progress as a collaborative multi-stakeholder effort that coordinates across programs and communicates with key stakeholders, reports progress, and acknowledges success stories and publishes and improvements, in communications products and materials. So how did we go about implementing goal 4? Well, first had to develop the message. We did that by developing a communication plan and communications toolkit. The plan provides a framework for sharing information among partners and collaborators, drawing in and engaging new partners, and informing key stakeholders and decision makers about progress and future needs. We developed materials such as fact sheets and business cards and an elevator speech, which you could use if you found yourself fortunately trapped in the elevator with an important person with whom you wanted to communicate the importance of your cause. The communications plan also includes um, plans for progress reports and developing social media. And here I'd like to speak to you for just a moment when I talk about the rest of the strategy, or this goal. I want to mention a few terms. First of all, we're going to talk about internal and external audiences. And for myself, within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I consider the internal audiences to be both those members of the Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as my partners with whom we wrote the National Seed Strategy together. External audiences are any of those outside of that. So the communication strategy helps us work on in-reach, up-reach, and outreach. To me, in-reach involves reaching out, reaching in to agency employees, my fellow colleagues. Up-reach involves being able to talk to agency leadership. And outreach involves communicating with PCA partners and other stakeholders. So once we had the message, how did we go about implementing the strategy? Well, first we tapped into existing networks. Two networks that I want to talk to you about are the Plant Conservation Alliance Network and the Plant Conservation Alliance Federal Committee. Both of these networks are mentioned within the SEED strategy. The Plant Conservation Alliance was established in 1994, and it includes federal agencies. It also includes non-federal partners who focus on plant conservation across the United States. It does include international members as well. The Plant Conservation Alliance hosts several listservs that focus on various issues of plant conservation, and we also host regular monthly features. You can see our featured speaker for July 14th, and I hope you'll join us. The Plant Conservation Alliance Federal Committee consists of the federal agencies with whom we partner. And here you can see the 15 federal agencies are listed there. And as I mentioned, it's currently chaired by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The Plant Conservation Federal Alliance was established in 1994 and was established by an MOU that is renewed every 5 years and signed by agency leadership. Now, within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we also tapped into some existing networks to include the Fish and Wildlife Service botanist team. This is a team of about 57 botanists and plant ecologists who focus mainly on threatened and endangered flora. And so we're able to find some common grounds, and they're also subject matter experts. So while the National Seed Strategy doesn't focus on using threatened and endangered species in restoration, we do focus on developing the habitat that they need. Another network that we tapped into is the Forest Ecology Working Group, which consists of foresters across the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service who focus on the issues of priority to our mission, but it also has a listserv that includes state and federal employees across the nation who are foresters. And so while their discussion focuses on healthy forests, and that's the nexus to the National Seed Strategy, their focus also includes is not restricted to native to just plants. So next, I'm going to talk to you about the what we did to fill the voids. We created actually two additional networks. The first is an interagency network called the Federal Implementation Working Group. As you can see, it is comprised of teams coming from those federal agencies that I mentioned to you before. This group is chaired by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Bureau of Land Management, which exemplifies the collaborative nature that is intended by the implementation of the seed strategy. Here you can see how the Federal Implementation Working Group fits under the umbrella of the Plant Conservation Alliance, and you can also see that there are 5 sub-teams that focus on specific activities that we need to undertake in order to implement the strategy across the agencies. The next team that we developed within the Fish and Wildlife Service is the Strategy Implementation Team. This consists of members from programs at headquarters as well as colleagues in the field within the various regions. This team is co-led by the National Wildlife Refuge System and Ecological Services, which also exemplifies the cross-programmatic collaborative effort that is asked for within the strategy um, within agencies as well. One of the tools that we developed for the strategy implementation team is a SharePoint site. Now this site helps both with inReach and outreach because any employee of the Fish and Wildlife Service is able to find this site within our network. Also, the strategy implementation team has their own pages dedicated to their region or their program, and it includes information on how the strategy is important to their priorities within their region or program and how it's helping them to address mission priorities. This is very helpful if we have opportunities to speak to leadership and we don't have much time to prepare for it. We can take information from our SharePoint site to help inform such communications. So let me turn now briefly to progress reporting. What did we find when we sought, we put a federal call out for actions from federal agencies to report actions they've taken to implement the strategy? Well, it looks like only 10% of the actions pertain to communication, which might not seem like a large amount, but let's look at that a little bit further. So first of all, the uh, Goal 4 is comprised of 3 sub-objectives. Objective 4.1 is external communications, Objective 4.2 is internal communications, and Objective 4.3 focuses on progress reporting and recognizing achievements. You can see that across the agencies, most of the effort was focused on progress reporting. That is reflective of the support that we've provided across our interagency network to help report progress, because that's how we highlight how important implementing the strategy is for our missions, our respective agency missions. Now, within the Fish and Wildlife Service, our curve looked a little bit different. While we did have a large amount of activity reported under the progress reporting and recognizing achievements, we also had a large amount of activity reported under 4.2, which is internal communications. And that reflects the internal teams that we've tapped into and created in order to address our implementation needs. So what's next for the National Seed Strategy? Well, we need to start by amplifying our message. This will include increasing public awareness on the importance of using locally adapted native seed in ecological restoration and incorporating national seed strategy objectives and the development of locally adapted native plants as part of our response to natural disasters, enhancing wildlife and habitat, and planning for invasive species removals rather than as afterthoughts. We also need to engage with more networks. This will include Native American tribes and Alaskan Natives, both to inform and learn from and share and amplify their voices to understand how culturally important native plants are to them. We will enhance our public private partnerships to amplify our seed networks. We're also going to minimize the void. We'll do that by working to improve information delivery systems so that the agency collaboration can happen more seamlessly. And we're also going to work on developing basic guidance and training for land managers who may not yet be accustomed to considering native plant species, or using locally adapted native species in their planning. I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you will consider joining us at our SER 2021 session on the National Seed Strategy, which will occur on June 22nd from 2015 to 2100 hours. See you then.